This is a medical diagram depicting a phenomenon known as degloving. For those unaware, this is a severe traumatic injury in which the top layer of skin and tissue is torn away from the muscle or bone. Just as a warning, if you're tempted to Google it, the image results are a little rough. And we can see this gruesome injury take place within the first 15 minutes of Final Destination Bloodlines. I've honestly never seen this kind of injury depicted in film before, and it definitely elicited a sort of whoa moment. There are actually quite a few of these moments in this film, as the gore has definitely been ratcheted up to 11. Right off the bat, this film seemingly announces this ain't your millennial uncle's Final Destination. In general, this film is a bit of a tonal departure from previous entries to the series, in more ways than one. But before I get into that, I do want to say I did enjoy this movie. As far as late-stage sequels go, Final Destination Bloodlines is probably one of the best I've seen. That is, of course, not particularly high praise considering the competition. However, I do think it's an impressive feat considering the franchise's spotty record when it comes to sequels. This IP has accumulated a lot of baggage over the past 2 decades, and I think co-directors Zach and Adam navigated that about as gracefully as anybody could hope for. Now, to briefly describe the plot, our film starts off way back in the 60s, following a young couple attending the grand opening of a Space Needle-style dining attraction called the Skyview. As it turns out, the construction was a bit of a rush job, as the entire building begins to crumble, killing everyone inside in a cascading series of wacky and creative accidents. Jumping back to modern day, it turns out this incident is a reoccurring nightmare of our main character, Stephanie. And the young couple trapped in the accident at the Skyview are none other than her grandfather Paul and grandmother Iris. Keen to investigate, Stephanie leaves her college campus to go home and link up with extended family, who inform her that Iris is estranged from the family and living like a reclusive hermit in the woods. So Stephanie travels to her grandmother's spooky, secluded fortress in order to tell her about the dreams that have been haunting her lately. Grandmother Iris reveals that these dreams are in fact a premonition she had way back at that fateful night at the Skyview. A premonition that allowed her to intervene and save the lives of everyone in attendance. Now, here's the twist. Iris has observed that everyone who survived the incident at the Skyview has been dropping like flies, as are all the descendants in their direct family line. It appears that, as far as death's concerned, any lives produced as a result of Iris's intervention shouldn't exist. And it's been working its way down the line to Iris's descendants, i.e. the main characters of this film. Hence the name Bloodlines. With the premise done and dusted, let's get into the positives of this film. 1, Bloodlines is really funny. I'd say the film is more effective as a comedy than it is as a horror. Previous films in the franchise have played with elements of comic relief, however, at their core tried to remain true to the ominous tone of the original. Bloodlines totally bypasses attempting to balance these somewhat dissonant tones by going full slapstick, wiener jokes, shock humor. And while that might sound juvenile to some, I think it was a really great decision. At its core, Final Destination is kind of a silly concept, and as no one at the reins has ever attempted to introduce more elevated themes or even explore death as an entity or character, I think it's best that these films remain a delivery system for tension and creative kill sequences. Which, by the way, is something this film delivers in droves. Maybe it's the budget, maybe it's the technological advancements in filmmaking, but this is the most impressive looking Final Destination by a long shot. Every sequence is extremely creative, well realized, and a total crowd pleaser. The people in my theater were going nuts. 2, pretty much all of the characters in this film were likable or at the very least tolerable, which is not something I can say for the rest of the franchise. In particular, I was a massive fan of tattooed hottie Eric, who got a surprising amount of screen time. This guy is super endearing and kind of feels like a second main character for the better half of the film. And to round out the positives, Bloodlines has an excellent sense of pacing and a very merciful runtime. I'm of the opinion that most modern movies are way too long. I don't know what happened, but it feels like sometime in the late 2010s, Hollywood decided every movie needs a Return of the King styled runtime. Personally, I like a tight script. Get in, tell your story, get out. If Danny Boyle could do Trainspotting in an hour 30, I think most films should be in that ballpark. Now, on to the negatives, or at least my minor complaints with this film. I do really wish this film had a higher emphasis on investigating the mechanics by which death operates. One of the best things about Final Destination 3 was the photo gimmick. Essentially, pictures taken the night of the inciting disaster contain hints or clues as to upcoming causes of death that could potentially be used to prevent them. This was a very engaging gimmick because it gave our characters a fighting chance, and it invited the viewer to speculate and attempt to unravel the mystery in real time. There was some effort to introduce these kinds of elements. At one point, it's implied that Stephanie may have some natural ability to predict upcoming causes of death. This is unfortunately not really followed up on at all. They also introduce a mechanic where if you flatline and are able to be brought back to life, that'll save you. This is fine, but it doesn't really invite the same level of audience participation or mystery reveal aha moments present in the third film. Also, around the midpoint of the film, there's a twist where it's revealed Eric is the product of an affair, meaning he's not actually a part of the bloodline Death is after. This twist was definitely effective at making the preceding deaths surprising, but it also means that at the tattoo parlor, Eric experienced a convoluted Rube Goldberg machine-esque near-death experience totally organically, which is kind of weird. It was definitely a fun sequence, so I'm not necessarily complaining, but it could be considered a bit of cheap misdirection if you really wanted to be pedantic. On that topic, there are a few things in this movie that don't make a lot of sense in a way that feels pretty goofy. And I do understand that this franchise requires a healthy suspension of disbelief, but please bear with me. For instance, Iris's anti-death fortress is absolutely riddled with spikes, rusty barbed wire, still water, and uneven terrain. This kind of hideout might make sense in a zombie apocalypse, but I'm not really sure this level of security would be effective against the ethereal embodiment of death, which, as we're shown in the movie, can just bypass the gate and the spikes and appear right in her home. If anything, this seems counterproductive. All I'm saying is for a woman whose primary goal is to stay alive, she seems to love surrounding herself with items that could easily kill her. Also, Bobby is very obviously wearing a metal watch in the MRI scene that would definitely be affected by the magnet. Someone in the costume department should have thought about that ahead of time, or at the very least had him take it off before the scene so it's not constantly waving around, breaking our sense of immersion. Finally, and I'm not sure this is a complaint, but Bloodlines has a distinctly reboot/requel feel. It's kind of hard to describe, but it is definitely there. It's almost like the film knows that audience members are well acquainted with and maybe nostalgic for the world of the film. And as a result, certain portions of the movie have an oddly reverent tone. This is not something I'm used to seeing in horror, and more something I associate with late-stage Indiana Jones or even Ghostbusters. Maybe I'm alone in this, but it just kind of felt like there was a weird Hollywood schmaltz vibe hanging over the film. Regardless, as I said earlier, I had a lot of fun with this film. Is it groundbreaking cinema? Is it thought-provoking and resonant? Probably not, but it was definitely a lot of fun to watch and did breathe much-needed life into a series that was seemingly long dead.